Ms Patten.
Thank you, Acting President. And I rise to speak just briefly on Mr Barton's motion. And it's sensible. Mr Barton and I probably didn't come to fisticuffs, but possibly didn't see eye to eye when, in the last term I introduced the ride-sharing a ride-sharing bill, which was around recognising ride-sharing, recognising that we needed to do something about that emerging part of the industry in that it needed to be regulated. And in doing so, in doing so, it wasn't great for the taxi industry, and I understand that. And it's been really wonderful to see how Mr Barton has been able to represent and advocate for the industry, and now seeing the industry as a whole. So now, actually, this motion goes to the fact that it's not just the taxi industry. It is the whole industry. It is all of those contractors, whether they're driving an Uber or a Didi, whether they're driving for Amazon, whether they're driving for whatever Menulog or whoever they may be contracted to, that they need the same protections. And I'd say last week I was at the memorial for workers for workers who had died. And it is one of the most moving memorials that you can ever witness, where you watch in silence as shoes are placed on stools in memory of each person who has died in a workplace accident. And those numbers are going to grow because, and it seemed remarkable that we hadn't done it before, because we didn't actually count road accidents in workplace deaths up until quite recently. So we're now seeing that. And we're now seeing the people that Mr Barton is working to protect through this motion now being reflected in that memorial. Now their shoes are on a stool to be remembered. And if we don't do something, we will just keep having to put more shoes on more stools. We need to introduce ways to protect that emerging cohort of workers. And this is not reinventing the wheel. This is not doing something that is out there. This is not doing something that's actually all that unusual. In fact, New South Wales has done it. And, for both sides of this House, it gets bipartisan support. So for some reason, I'm hearing people in this chamber saying that we don't need it, we've got adequate protections. We don't. We do not have adequate protections. In fact, we have very few protections for these workers, and that we certainly need to be able to set minimum standards. The minimum wage at the moment is $20.30 or something. Now, I suspect that many of those delivery people would dream about getting the minimum wage, would dream about it. They do not have even the basic minimum working conditions that most workers, would just assume would never be taken away from them. I mean, we're arguing for increases on the minimum wage, and quite rightly we are arguing for increases on minimum wage. But here we are talking about workers who don't even have the privilege of being able to call to receive the minimum wage, do not have the privilege to be able to call to have proper meal breaks, to ensure that they can work safely. We call them subcontractors, and I think, the gig economy is changing the way we work, and it is changing, and, there's no point trying to put our head in the sand to say that's not happening. It is changing, and so we have to, our regulations and our enforcement have to reflect that. I guess from my perspective, drawing on what we're doing with sex work. Now, we've decriminalised sex work, but that is actually about providing greater protections to those workers who are self-employed. And that is about the government recognising that that those workers, even though they are self-employed or they may be subcontractors, need protection. They need workplace health and safety regulations and requirements to protect them and the people that they may work with. So drivers are no different. Drivers need that protection, and there should be a body to ensure that happens. We've heard about Ms Terpstra and Ms Shing spoke about the various court cases on this, but what I think we should also be really turning to what we've seen in New South Wales and what they've been able to do in setting minimum rates for some of these workers. What they've been able to do is setting work conditions which will improve those safety outcomes. And I think this is, we see those ads about the reason we have work cover is, or the reason we have these rules is so people don't work safely, they come home safely, that they come home through that door. And I think that, it's those ads you see on television where it's about someone coming home to their family that really gets to the point of our regulations in this community. And if we are a modern society, then we must be extending those protections, extending those rights to all workers. And in doing this, and I think Mr Barton is being progressive in this, in recognising that this economy is here to stay. We are seeing the technological revolution will change the way we work, will change the way that our relationship with employers and employees are changing, and that is probably sadly for some inevitable. But introducing a tribunal such as this will provide a voice, will provide a really balanced voice, and will be able to establish those protections so we are not seeing more shoes on stools at our memorials.